It means your balance between work and your life. Recovery resilience, low or high. Work intensity, high and low. FM Alexander said you can't determine your future, but you can determine your habits, and your habits determine your future. Good coping strategies, but I'm going to add this as an asterisk, till they aren't. We have this kind of like life wheel, radar wheel we call it. Personal relationships over here, work relationships over here. This is what your work-life balance looks like right now. And what's your social life like? Awful too. Well, I'm here and I want to be here in these areas. How am I going to do it? Hello again. Work-life balance. Perhaps the defining topic in the workplace of the last 5 years, particularly I think for leaders. Leaders face work-life balance challenges on, I think, two main fronts, both of which require thoughtful attention and action. First, leaders face the challenge of managing their own work-life balance, given the pressure to deliver results and the do-it-all, right? Many leaders find themselves working longer and longer and longer hours, sacrificing personal time, sacrificing health perhaps, sacrificing relationships, and ultimately facing burnout. And if you're a leader, that sounds like very familiar stuff to you, I am sure. And second, leaders must navigate the delicate balance of managing the work-life balance of their people, their teams. Now, this is a huge consideration given recent studies that show that a staggering 66% of workers report feeling they don't have a proper work-life balance. And that's probably you too, and despite 72% of employees acknowledging its importance. So we all know it, but we're not fixing it. The truth is the volume of work, or the potential for more work, is not going away anytime soon. In fact, if anything, it's increasing. I listened to a great podcast just today from those geniuses at Freakonomics. The podcast taught about the future of work. If you get time, it's about 45 minutes. It's really, really, really good. 60% of all the jobs around today did not exist 20 years ago. Sure, nursing and laboring, and there are there's lots of jobs that still exist that were around, say, a generation or two ago, but 60% of all the work that people are doing now didn't exist. And we're working harder and harder and harder and faster and faster and faster, and technology is supposed to make it easier, but really it isn't. So the real challenge for leaders is not trying to shrink the workload, but rather they need to understand and prioritize the workload with their life, get that work-life balance right. So leaders, we must start to make smarter decisions about how we allocate resources and effort and energy, all to ensure that both individual and team well-being are giving the real attention that they deserve. Well, how do they do that? Well, the clue's in the name of our podcast today. That's exactly why we've put together this episode for you, to help you recognize the importance of work-life balance, and most importantly, I suppose, what you can do about it so that you can stop managing and start leading. So, with that being said, welcome to Stop Managing and Start Leading. This is the podcast for leaders who need to stop managing and for managers who want to start leading. I'm your host, Antonio Garrido, the founder and president of this organization, My Daily Leadership. I'm a serial entrepreneur, I'm a business founder, and I am a leader just like you. I am a 3 times author, and I have led businesses from teeny tiny all the way to very, very big, with billions in revenue and thousands of employees. What if I told you that the secret to exceptional leadership is easier and closer than you think? Every leader and every manager has the potential to become exceptional, to become the kind of leader that they, their people, and their business deserve, and you are no exception. So you simply need to discover the mindsets, tools, competencies, and habits to unlock that potential, and that's what we're doing here today. I hope you enjoy it. That's where we come in. So give the subscribe button some love this morning. You know you want to. So please subscribe to the My Daily Leadership YouTube channel today for lots of actionable insights and practical tools in our podcast episodes that drop every single week. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, show the same kind of love to the follow button. Thank you very much. Both will help you to level up your leadership, so do it now, okay? Story time. My dad, he grew up as a shepherd in central southern Spain, and I mean, they were poor with a capital. Oh my God, we're so poor, right? Poor shepherds. They all lived in a one-room cabin built by my grandfather. There were 7 children, and the children all slept under the double bed where the parents slept. And in the winter, so that the potatoes wouldn't get frost, the potatoes went under the bed and the kids went out in the barn. The first one up wore the shoes because there was only one pair of shoes. You get the idea, poor. If you fell down and broke your leg, you either died, straight up died, or you had a limp for the rest of your life. Anyway, all that to say, he never went to school. He couldn't read or write. And he was really, really smart. Probably the smartest guy I've ever met. He just doesn't know anything. He doesn't know any facts, but he was a genius. There came a time when I was in the corporate world. My career was doing rather well. Bigger and bigger companies, bigger and bigger roles, bigger and brighter, and bigger demands. As you can imagine, work. And I'd often be the first one in the car park in the morning, right? All the lights were out, right? I would show up, right? And I'd be the last car to leave at night, and all the lights were out again, right? And it just, that's how it was, and that's what was expected, and that's what we did, and we all worked hard. And do you know what though? Whatever I did, whatever I tried, however I tried to organize, there was this particular job, I had 2, count them, 2 personal assistants. On my first day, when I was introduced to people around the organization, I was introduced to 2 ladies. The first one, they said, this is your personal assistant, let's call her Mary. That wasn't her name. And I thought, oh, hello, Mary. And then they said, and this is your personal assistant, let's call her Gail. And I said, well, I thought Mary's my... And they said, no, they're both your personal assistant. And I thought, how terrific, brilliant, 2 personal assistants. I kind of thought to myself, all right, you know you've made it when... ... You have 2 personal assistants. Truth of the matter is, within a few months, I realized why I had 2 personal assistants. It was the busiest job I'd ever had. There was a million things to do, to the extent that it took 2 personal assistants to kind of juggle everything to help me juggle everything that needed to be done. So it wasn't because it's just like, what a great job. It's because actually, you got to be careful what you wish for sometimes, don't you? Anyway. So it's 6 months in, 7 months in, and I'm working every hour that God sends. Am I really making a dent in the world? Probably not. Am I juggling all the balls? Yeah. Spinning all the plates? Yeah. How's my work-life balance? Not good. How's everybody else's? Not good. Demanding more and more from less and less. More and more lemon juice out of fewer and fewer lemons. It was tough. It was really tough. I was enthusiastic and I was dedicated and all of that good stuff and committed. But I realized little by little, almost like the Chinese water torture, that my whole life this was now my life, right? And it was everyone's life, right? All the senior team, this was their life too. And I remember one day my dad said to me when we were talking about another weekend where I had to work, another weekend where we couldn't come to a family meal, another weekend where we couldn't come to that party, or if we came to that party, we were always somewhere else and we were looking at these, and it was just, you know what I mean? Anyway, my wise dad said to me, Antonio, one day, he said, remember, there aren't that many people on their deathbed that wish they'd spent more time in the office. Get your priorities right. He said it in Spanish, of course, and he was entirely right. And I hope that resonates with you somewhat. There aren't many people on their deathbed wish they'd spent more time in the office. To get your priorities right. And so finally, before we dive into today's models for those people listening or watching, saying that they really don't have time to, well, look after their wellness, right? Look after their life, get all of that sorted out. I'll just say this, that if you don't figure it out, if you think you haven't got time to look after your wellness, and I don't just mean going to the gym and meditating and journaling, I mean getting your work-life balance right. If you think you don't have time to look after your wellness and all that means, I promise you one day you'll be forced to find time for your illness. Just saying. Okay, so lecture over. Let's dive into the first of our 2 models for today. Okay, so a few sessions ago we were looking at this thing that we call the leadership honeycomb, and I promised you that we were talking about, some lack of clarity and vision, lack of trust and truth, lack of time, lack of commitment, and I promised you that we would get to this principle here, if you can see for those that are watching, and again you can download this, right? But we're looking at this principle here of overwork and burnout, and I said, look, we will get to that in a couple of weeks. Well, here we are. A couple of weeks have passed, and now here we are. I want to draw you a new model. It's work-life balance. So let's just call it that. Let's give it a nice big title. Work-life balance. And it doesn't mean your work-life balance. It means your balance between work and your life. Okay, so work-life balance. And I guess the question for today is, how can I fix it? Now, I tell you what, as well, one of our earlier episodes, we talked about working on the business and not in the business. Until you figure this out, until you figure this work-life balance piece out, you'll never be on the business. You'll only be in the business. But okay, I'm imagining that you're a bit of a Superman or a Supergirl, Superwoman, whatever that, right? I imagine you're rather splendid and you're like a Marvel, right? An Avenger, and you're tough and resilient and all of that kind of stuff, and you can go forever and you have superpowers, no doubt. But let's just pretend for a second that you're not actually Bruce Banner. Do you know who Bruce Banner is? As in the Hulk, right? Let's pretend for a second that whilst you're close to being Bruce Banner and the Hulk, you're not actually. So let's unpick that for a second. So I'm just drawing very quickly a quick 4-box model. Everybody knows what they are like, so even our auditory learners can follow along. So we've got a 4-box model. Along the bottom, we're going to be talking about recovery. In other words, your ability to recover from stress and pressure and work and loading, right? So recovery and resilience. So that's either low or high. In other words, your ability to recover, your resilience is either low or it's high. Okay, cool. And then let's look along the y-axis, along the left-hand side going up. We have work intensity. Another way of thinking about that is load and stress. Okay, and that's either high or it's low. And actually, let me tell you a story. Years and years ago, something's just occurred to me. Years ago, when I was learning how to fly, here's what happened. For any of those of you who have done the same thing, right, got a pilot's license. The instructors were really, certainly at my flight school, they were just trying to clock up, I don't know, let's say 3,000 hours or whatever it was, instructing people so that they could log 3,000 hours and then go and become a commercial airline pilot. Nothing wrong with that, perfectly good. So these guys, they would get to work in the morning and they would take a lesson. And between each of the lessons, they would grab themselves a coffee like this. And then the pupils, like I was, we'd go around the plane, do our pre-flight checks and all of that good stuff, give them a thumbs up, then the instructor would come out and we'd both jump into the cockpit and off we would go. Terrific. it was a little bit of a kind of what's it called, like a carousel. It was just like, it was quite slick, that system, and there wasn't much time in between. But I never wanted to let the instructor be waiting, right? Because I knew that the clock was ticking. So if I was 10 minutes late, we didn't fly for 10 minutes longer. I only got 40 minutes instead of 50 minutes. You get the idea. So I was never late. I was always early. And so what do you do whilst you've had your coffee and what you're waiting for the plane that you're about to jump into to land? So I would wander around the aerodrome and grab myself a coffee. In the UK, at any rate, the FAA, which is the aviation, the government body that looks after all of the aviation, the FAA used to put on every aerodrome in the UK the results, the reports from any airline crashes or near misses across the country. So any kind of crash or near miss had to be investigated, and it had to be reported, and those reports would find themselves on the notice boards of all of the aerodromes around the country, including all of the flight schools. So I'm stood in front of the notice board with my coffee in my hand, waiting for the plane to land, reading about all of these plane crashes. Right? It's probably not the smartest thing in the world to do when you're just about to jump into a plane. Anyway, that notwithstanding, I would read these reports, and it occurred to me one day when I'd read a bunch of them, and they must be available for public consumption. So maybe go have a read of a few of them. Super duper interesting, right? If you're into that kind of stuff. If you have any fear of flying, please don't read them. But if you're interested, do read them. But anyway, it occurred to me, reading all of these reports, that planes don't crash because wings fall off, right? Just think about that for a second, right? Wings and engines don't fall off aeroplanes, right? Again, I don't want to worry anybody, but you've driven in a car 1,000,000 times. Wheels don't just fall off cars. Cars crash, of course, but they don't crash because a wheel fell off, right? Planes don't crash because a wing fell off. Because if wings fell off planes willy-nilly, right, they wouldn't be allowed to fly. Wings don't fall off planes. Engines don't fall off planes. Planes don't just blow up, right? Most plane crashes are down to pilot error, like nearly every one. The pilots have screwed up. It's not because a wing fell off. Okay. Well, why do pilots screw up? Well, it's because they think they're doing the right thing, but they're doing the wrong thing. Well, why do they think they're doing the right thing but they're actually doing the wrong thing? Well, it's actually because of loading and stress. So here's what happens because every plane that crashes, they retrieve what's called the flight box. What's that called? The flight recorder. Sorry, I had a senior moment there for a second. The flight recorders, then they get the flight recorder and the flight recorder records every single thing that happens on that plane from the moment it kind of left that morning till the point that it crashed, right? Every single communication, every single movement, every single switch, right? It records everything. So they can reconstruct or even deconstruct the crash, even the conversations between the tower or the pilots and the crew and all of that good stuff. I heard a comedian once, and I can't remember who it was, that said, every time a plane crashes and they always get that like flight recorder box, the only thing that survives is that flight recorder. Everything else is like in pieces apart from the flight recorder. That they always seem to recover that. He says, why don't they make aeroplanes out of the same stuff they make the flight recorder boxes? Which I think is a really good question for another day. Anyway, what you'll find is you'll have a pilot with 30 years experience who's flown that very model and make of plane for 10 years with no incident, the same route. The guy could almost do it in his sleep. So why would there be pilot error? Why would somebody super experienced, maybe as experienced as you are, who knows how to fly a plane, maybe as well as you know how to run your business, right? And has done it many, many times, as you probably have been through a whole bunch of cycles and years in your organization through lots of business plans and so on. Why would a pilot crash? Because here's what happens. It's a normal flight. Things are going okay. 99 times out of 100. What happens then is maybe some bad weather moves in. Okay, bad weather's fine. You can deal with bad weather. And then maybe a few minutes later, an alarm goes off because there's a fault somewhere on the plane. So now they're dealing with the bad weather and they're dealing with the fault. And then maybe they get an instruction from the ground that tells them to change attitude or height, so they now have to follow that instruction. And then maybe the co-pilot says something to them and now they have to pay attention to that. And then one of the crew walks in and asks them how many cups of sugar they want with their coffee. And what's happened is their load has gone up, their stress has gone up, and then what happens, there comes a point, and we talk about this a lot in my daily leadership, an inflection point. And when that inflection point happens, the pilot's ability to make a decision doesn't start to degrade slowly over time. They get to a point where they come into catastrophic terminal decline, where their ability to make a smart decision doesn't just drop by a few percent, it crashes to almost zero, which is why a very experienced pilot can be flying a common route, but a few things happen all at once with no prior warning, and then they can be talking to a flight attendant. I think I'll have three sugars in my coffee, and I think I'll try the fish today. And whilst ever that's happening, they crash into a mountainside. Because what's the issue? It's this intensity that they're dealing with, where these unexpected things all happen and pile up and pile up and pile up, and they get too loaded and too stressed. Okay, all that to say, if you can take only one thing from today, it's this. When you meet your team members, start asking them these two questions. Ask them how loaded they are right now, from a scale of, let's say, 1 to 10. In other words, what's their workload looking like from 1 to 10? And if it's 7, okay, 7, fine. But if it's 10, week after week after week after week, and they are loaded 10 consistently for a period of time, and then you also ask them, okay, so what's your loading? 7. How stressed are you? Because some people have different ability to handle stress than others. And if they're feeling 7 loaded and 7 stressed, okay. But if after week after week after week, they're 10 loaded and 10 stressed, and you don't do anything about it, and they crash into the side of a mountain, figuratively speaking, whose fault's that? I think that's your fault. So start asking your people how loaded they are, 1 to 10, how stressed they are, 1 to 10. And if you're seeing patterns that are worrying you, do something about it. Same in your journal, every day or every week perhaps. How loaded are you right now? How stressed are you right now? And if that pattern continues, eventually you're going to have to find time for your illness. Okay, back to the model. Slight diversion. We've got another diversion before we go to another model. Okay, cool. So recovery resilience, low or high, work intensity, high and low, right? So how manic and how crazy are things right now? If you have low recovery and low resilience, and the work intensity is high over a period of time, well, it doesn't take a genius to know that this is burnout zone, right? This isn't a good place to be. This is burnout zone. What does that mean? That means chronic stress. All chronic means is over a long period of time. Okay, so chronic stress versus acute stress. Acute stress is fine, where people are doing this and they're super stressed because it's the end of the quarter, and then there's a bit more time for a breather, and then it gets busy again, and that's fine. Acute stress is fine. Planes don't crash because of acute stress. They crash because of chronic stress. So chronic stress, exhaustion, irritability, is that you, I wonder? Lack of creativity, lack of emotional withdrawal. You get it, okay? Emotional withdrawal, right? So you know what burnout looks like. Okay, what if your work intensity is high, but your recovery and resilience is high. Okay, so you're constantly in recovery mode. And remember, our resilience is probably not quite as high as we would like it to be. Always in recovery mode. So you are firefighting. And really, you should spend much more time as a leader in fire prevention rather than firefighting. You're efficient, yes, correct. But not effective. But not effective. Good way to remember what's the difference between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is doing things well. Effectiveness, or rather, efficiency is doing things right. And effectiveness is doing the right things. Think about that. Probably good coping strategies. Gym, meditation, all that kind of stuff. Good coping strategies, but I'm going to add this as an asterisk, till they aren't. What does that mean? That looks like the side of the hill again. What about low recovery, low resilience, but low work and intensity and stress? Low. Well, some stress is good. Some, get the heart pumping is good. This is really, it's a stagnation zone. Okay, stagnation zone, disengagement. So, make sure your people are busy. It's just how busy for how long, right? So disengagement. Boredom, perhaps. And underutilization. Let me try that one. Underutilization. Lack of purpose. And I guess lack of fulfillment. Okay, cool. What's this? Work intensity low and at times high. That's okay. We're just going to call this high performance. Right? So we want to flip in between these two here. This is high productivity. We want 70% here, 30% here. I just thought I'd give you that. High productivity, strong self-care perhaps. Clear boundaries. Supportive habits. You get the idea, okay? FM Alexander said you can't determine your future, but you can determine your habits, and your habits determine your future. Think about that one. All right, so let's just peek into these just for a second. What do we do here? We have to prioritize recovery. And just as important, delegate better. It's a recurring theme, isn't it, right? Delegate better. Here, I guess it's seek or even create meaningful challenges. Reset your goals. Set or reset. Right, more challenges, got it. This is all about boundaries, so maintain boundaries. Assess regularly, right? Assess stress regularly. What do we do here? Pretty straightforward. Plan and allocate resources better. And Remember my dad. Remember Antonio's dad. There aren't many people on their deathbed wish they spent more time at the office. Okay. I hope that helped. I hope that just gave you some things to think about, maybe pointed you in the right direction. Maybe it was the nudge you needed. And if you typically join us on YouTube, you know that we always create a model like this by drawing them out just like that, because we're visual learners. We mentioned that. If you're listening on a podcast platform, auditory learner, that's okay too, but you'll miss this, right? So this model, previous model, and the model I'm going to draw for you in a minute is beautifully taken by Cornelia and made something that you can actually read rather than my scroll and scribble. They're complimentary downloads on our website, all the W's, mydailyleadership.com/podcast. Okay, so just before we go back to the final model from today, usually we use this moment to share something exciting, like maybe a new resource on our website, or tell you about our book, My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success. But today, in the spirit of work-life balance, we're actually going to take a break instead. Both of us, we're going to take a break. Are you ready? We're going to take a couple of minutes to enjoy some calming music, some relaxing visuals, courtesy of our lovely editor, Oscar. Now, don't skip it, right? Just relax, take it easy. So, if you're going to start making work-life balance a priority, let's start today. We always say to begin, to change, change. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back. How'd you feel? A little more relaxed, a little more focused, a little less tense in the shoulders, less Botox required in a few months? I hope so. Remember, taking care of yourself is not a distraction. It's not a nice to have, right? It's a need to have. It's part of doing your very best work and becoming the very best leader that you can be for your people. So let's get back into today's episode, shall we? One last model to quickly walk you through. And I think it'll help you figure out. Remember I said ask your people how loaded you are, how stressed you are? It's a version of that, but a little bit more sophisticated. So check this out. Okay, so here's what I'm going to introduce you to today. Now, or rather this time, I'm going to draw for you that's kind of like the spokes of a wheel. When you actually go to our website and download the real model, it's more of a compass around a radar wheel. We love radar. Why? Because it's like flying as well, right? So, but because I'm not very good at drawing circles. I don't know if you know, but I think it was Rembrandt. You have to Google that. Could draw a perfect circle. You could hand draw an almost perfect circle. One of those great masters, anyway. Certainly not me. So, anyway, if you could imagine that this was kind of embedded in a circle, right? Circle-ish, right? Which we were going to call our kind of radar wheel. In our program, we have, I think for about 6 months, every day, we have our leaders doing the exercise, and we're just about to walk you through, looking at the model that I'm just about to share with you, to get a real good sense of where they're at with their life and what's going on. So let me put a few words in here, explain what it looks like, right? So up here, let's think about leadership effectiveness, not efficiency, right? Effectiveness. Attitude, like what's your attitude like? Let's say personal relationships. Because they're all important. Health, how's your health doing? Personal growth. So when you download this from our website, just download 15 of them. You'll see why in a minute. Family life. How's your family life? How are your work relationships? Personal relationships over here. Work relationships over here. And then how's your social life? If you're thinking, well, what's that? Then you already know you have a problem, right? So, okay, social life. So we have this kind of like life wheel, radar wheel, we call it. The kind of what's on our radar, what's coming up ahead, where are we going to crash, right? So we have this radar. And what we then have is a whole bunch of circles coming out from the middle to the outside. See, I can't even draw tiny circles. How was I going to draw a big one? Just be patient. I know you're busy. I know you've got a lot going on. I know you haven't got time for this kind of nonsense. So, if you can kind of imagine, they go from the middle out and we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's pretend, right? Here's what I need you to do. Think about, on a scale of like 0 to 8 on this, what's your attitude like at the moment? If you say, okay, well, I'm about a 5. What about your personal relationships? I'm about a 7. What's your health like? Probably a 3. What about your personal growth? Maybe a 6. How's your family life? Haven't seen them in 6 months. That's a 2. What's your work relationship like? Yeah, it's okay. We'll call that a 7. What's your social life like? Awful. 2. How about your leadership effectiveness? I'm too busy to spend any time with my people. We'll call that a 3. You get the idea, right? If you then connected all of these dots, as I'm showing you here, right? And then wrote down here, 14th of May, 2025, whatever the date is, right? That's a very strong visual representation of what your life's looking right now. This is what your work-life balance looks like right now. If you then, you got 2 choices, what you can do now. You can either say, well, that's no good. Where do I want it to be in 6 months' time? So this is option 1. You could say, well, in 6 months' time, I want it to look like this, say, this dotted line, That will be 14th May, June, July, August, September, October, November. Right, 14th of November, 2025. I want it to look like that. Great. So the question then is, what do I have to do in each of these areas to make that go from a 4 or 5, let's say, to a 7? So in health, I got to get from a 5 to a 7. How? Personal growth, I got to get from a 6 to a 7. How? So make a plan, right? This is a very, very visual way. Make a plan, or a few plans. Very visual way to say, well, I'm here and I want to be here in these areas. How am I going to do it? Make a plan. You're a leader. You know how to make plans. Make a plan. Option 1. Option 2 is track this over time. This is where I am on the 14th of May. Where am I on the 14th of June? Do it again. Are you happy with what that looks like? Are you making progress? Are you going forwards? Are you going backwards? So you can either use this radar model on the download to track how you are doing, or you can use it to say, here's where I am. That's not good enough. Here's where I'm going to be. Here's my plan to get me there. This is like a visual representation of how stressed are you right now? How loaded are you right now? How balanced are things for you right now? It's a very strong visual representation of that. Be super honest with yourself when you're drawing this, right? When you're completing this. Most of our leaders are rather disappointed when they do this the first time. And then they go, okay, that's no good. I got to fix it. And fix it you shall, but not until you know what the problem is. So this is kind of like a leadership effectiveness X-ray as well as a radar or an MRI. Okay, you get the idea. This is a really, really strong visual and psychological tool to help you. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you do it and apply it. And it's just one of the many tools or techniques that we have to improve your leadership ability every day, every day, every day. Remember, there's immense power in marginal gains. There's also power in community. So share your questions, insights, topic suggestions in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. While you're down there, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and subscribe too. Go on, you know you want to. And for our auditory learners, you only get half the story. I mentioned it a bunch of times. Go over to our YouTube channel where you can see this, but more importantly, go and download the model, because Cornelia makes the terrible thing I draw, makes it gorgeous, at www.mydailyleadership.com/podcast. In the next episode, because I know you're dying to know what it is, we'll be covering one of our favorite topics, which is starting a daily leadership development journal. How do we develop that habit? How do we do it? Lots of people tell us, well, I would journal if only I knew what to write. I would journal if I only knew how much to write. I would journal if only I knew. Well, we're going to tell you all of that. So great. So if any leader tells you that they are serious, listen to me now. If any leader tells you that they are serious about developing themselves and their team and their company, but they don't journal, don't believe them. Mic drop. Mic drop. I bet that got your attention. I'm Antonio Garrido with My Daily Leadership. Thanks for being here. Until next time, by wisdom and effort, ta-ta now.